So, Father, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And in your church as well, St. Mary's of Malden.
Lovely church.
We're very, very grateful to use it. It's a beautiful place. I just wanted to take a moment to ask you about your journey through faith and how you ended up here, any little adventures along the way.
Wow, wonderful. I'm not sure where to start with that question because it goes right back. And but let me try to give some snippets that have been key along this journey. So I was born into a Christian home, a typical Anglican family, but there was a division right there because my mum was from a very Anglican, Anglo-Catholic sort of tradition. Her father was a priest. But my dad's side of the family were deeply Methodist. And so there was that division right there. And, for us, the children, if you wanted to come home to a hot meal, then you would go to Mom's church because when Mom gets home, that's when she cooks. So I think Dad finally bought into that. And so we all ended up in the Anglican church. You go to church kicking or screaming, whatever you wanted, whether you wanted or not, you would go to church. So church has been pretty much part and parcel of my upbringing, Sunday Mass, Bible study, Sunday school in the first, and then Mass, and then in the evening there's always something, and during the week you've got choir practice and prayer meetings and all of that. So that church for us was integral to our upbringing. And so we enjoyed it because that's what we did. And we enjoyed church and the family. But growing up, I realized there's something about the family faith and a personal faith. And it wasn't until I was finished, gone through university and finished, that actually I would say that I had my personal faith. Felt like I was piggybacking on my parents and the family faith throughout because, church is something we did. So wherever I went, I always connected with the local church, tried to be part of it and do whatever, I could do. But I know I'm looking dressed now as a priest. That was not the plan at all. I totally loved computers. Computers was my thing. I remember my dad got me my first Olivetti computer in 1996.
Just when I was born.
Oh, wow. There you go. There you go. That tells me I'm old now.
Yeah.
But I was totally fascinated by this piece of kit. And, by the next day I had, opened it up and pulled everything apart and was struggling to put it back because, you've got to get it all together before Dad comes back from work or you will be,
in trouble.
Big trouble. So I really struggled to put it back together, didn't quite get there. And so when Dad comes in, how's your computer? I say, it's brilliant, it's lovely, it's all working, but it wasn't. But then I, sort of eventually got it to work, and I just was fascinated by it. And I also had a dot matrix printer, and some of you might remember that.
Oh, yeah.
The very loud one that goes, makes all that noise. But I totally enjoy that, and that led me into a career of computing and stuff, which I loved and enjoyed so much. And I really put my whole self in my career. So priesthood was not in the picture. But as we know, we carry on with life, got married and settled, got, working and everything else. But there was a moment when some of the structures, and this is what we do in life, we build structures into our lives, pillars that we depend on. Sometimes it's family, sometimes it's our work, it's the community we live in. But I found myself in a place where all of that seems to just fall apart. Those foundations that I relied on sort of was breaking. Family was breaking, the community I was in, friendships were breaking. And I found myself in a very bad place. I was still a Christian, going to church and doing all of that. So my question at that point was, why me? Why is all this happening? Lord, I've always been part of the church. I've always, not as a priest, but I've always, tried to get myself involved in church wherever I was. And so why will all these things start falling apart? Of course, there was no answer. Things just getting worse and worse and worse. And I just said, you know what, God, do you really exist? Do you really love me? And so that was when I turned my eyes away from God, I would say. Intentionally, taking my eyes off God, just denying his existence. Because God, if you're so good, why are all these things falling apart in my life, And so I went off and I did my own thing, and I just, as they say in the wilderness, did whatever, I thought was... But in all of that, I didn't find any peace. I didn't find fulfillment. And I was around some people that did some very bad things, and somehow God spared me out of all of that. Or, well, at the time I didn't know. But anyway, what happened was my auntie, who's a Methodist priest, through my time in the wilderness, will always phone me random. At random, I'll just pick this phone call, and she'll say to me, you know what, God is not done with you yet. She was the only one that just kept encouraging me in my faith. And sadly enough, she was the only one I listened to. Other people will try and I just drop the phone or cut it off or not even pick up the phone. Because, when you lose relationships and when things are broken in your life, people judge you. People phone you all the time and they're just judging you. And that's not what you want at that time. And so many of my friends got cut off. I didn't pick so many. In fact, I even went as far as changing my phone number. I only kept my old phone just to, for those people that I thought, for work and other things. But what happened at that time for me with my auntie ringing, I later realized that kept fanning the flame of my faith in a way that I didn't recognize. But there was something there. And she persisted. She kept calling every now and again. And I would just listen to her out of respect, really, and nothing else. And so there was a time when I decided to do a course do a master's degree, actually, in computer forensics, because I was now getting very much excited about, this idea of cybercrime, and this was a time when it was all coming up. And so I thought, I'll do something in computer forensics, and computer security, just to keep myself busy and keep myself focused in a time where my life was all over the place. And I started doing that. At the same time, the church I was attending at the time, St. Mary's in Becontree, the priest there was the Reverend Julie Fleming, a lovely, lovely woman of God, full of faith and full of the Spirit of God. She was she was just amazing. She loved God so much, and there was just this outpouring of love whenever you were around her. And so she came up to me one day and said, you know what, Andrew, I think you need to think a bit deeper about your faith. And I wasn't sure where that came from. And I was like, really? Yeah, okay. And she said, why don't you do the CCS course? At the time, I didn't know what the CCS course was. I believe you've done it, Chris. The course in Christian Studies within the Church of England. And I thought, really? But she kept, she was someone I respected. And I said, okay, I'll give it a go. So I signed up for this course. Just about the same time I was doing my master's, and I was getting lots of fulfillment from doing that course, because that's something I loved, my master's degree. But this is the key. When I went to the CCS course in the evenings, we had a lovely cohort, and it was a group of people who had many stories to tell. Some were younger than I was, some were older than I was. but there was something special about their stories. There was something deeply, there was something that connected all of us deeply at a very fundamental level. Some had stories like I had, and some were very different. But there was something true, there was something real, there was something authentic about our group and the stories we shared. And I found so much joy in the evenings when we went for the CCS course. So it felt like my day, when I woke up in the morning, rather than looking up to having some intellectual conversations with my lecturers about, computers and forensics and where we're going with cloud security and all of that, I found myself looking to the group and hearing these stories and reading scripture and connecting our stories with scripture. That gave me so much joy. And I found that something began to bubble on the inside of me. Perhaps faith was beginning to find room in my heart. And so I look forward to it. So much so that I got so many parking tickets because I'll be driving there late. And when I get there, there's nowhere to park, and I'll just park somewhere, and then when you come out, you've got to get there. Yeah. And I remember that's the most I've ever had parking tickets. But it didn't really bother me because I was so engrossed.
Wow.
In the conversations, and it was so enriching. And that was the beginning of me rediscovering my faith. And the Reverend Dowling, he's now the manager of the retreat house in Pleshy, Chelmsford Dows's retreat house. I should remember his name. Yes, he was leading our retreat, our CCS course, and so when we were coming to the end of the CCS course, he said to me, "Andrew, what's next?" And I didn't know what was next. I was confused at the time, and I began to wrestle with myself and with what I thought God was saying to me. And so I began to share that with people. I've got this weird sense that I might be called into ministry, but I wasn't sure what kind of ministry. And so Mr. Dowling said to me, go to some vocations days. Vocations days are like a day when the Church of England sets aside, to just get people to come and talk about their calling, what they feel God is calling them to, and then they also outline all the different ministries within the Church of England, ordained or not. And it's just an opportunity for you to explore. And so I went to quite a few of those, actually, in the Barking area. And there was still that, uncertainty within that. To sort of cut a long story short, I'll say this, I took 2 weeks sort of partially off to try to discern, really, because it was troubling me. I was like someone who had a troubled heart. Yeah. I wasn't sure. I was in the crossroads of life. What am I doing? I mean, what is God calling me to do? Yes, I want to say yes to God, but what does that mean for me? I was trying to discern all of that. And even in the 2 weeks I took off, I didn't, I was hoping I'll hear a loud voice say, "Andrew, you are called to ordained ministry." But that never happened. No. So it just made it even more interesting for me. But there was one occasion, and I remember this vividly because I think this is where God spoke to me quite clearly to say, son, I want you to be a priest within the Church of England. So we were at the retreat center for a retreat. And throughout the retreat, it was a 4-day retreat, I was wrestling with this one question about being ordained or not. And then I would list all the reasons why I couldn't be an ordained minister, because for me, that would have meant that I would have to leave my secular job, because the sense of calling I had was a total call. So not time sharing, not partner. No. I was done with that in my life, my previous life. I'd tried many things, but if I was going to serve God, then I was going to give my everything to it. And maybe that's why the decision was a bit harder. But I tell you this moment, when I was in the room called the Orangery, I was sitting on a couch. And I had all these thoughts and all these questions for God to answer, or reasons why I couldn't be a priest. And one of them, of course, was being someone who was coming from a place of providing for others, children and family and friends. To become a priest means you're going to have a loss of income, and that's naturally a worry for not just yourself, but those around you. And two, I call them my guardian angels. So these was a couple that worked with the London Mission. I can't remember the full name. CMS, is it? Christian Mission in London, something okay. Like that, I'm not quite sure. But this ministry in London, and he came and sat on my left, and she came and sat on my right. And they were sharing stories of how God has always provided for them, right from when they started their ministry to having their 4 or 5 children, I think they said they had, and even until this day. How God has always, how they had never lacked. Yeah. How they've always been cared for by God. And then they said that, and then they walked away. Mm. They left me in my, confused state. And I just paused at that moment, and I was like, wow. Yeah. Even though I knew that God provides for his people. Yeah. But I think I needed to hear it. Yeah. And there was this peace and calm that just went through my heart. And it just felt like, wow, yes, I am called to be a priest. And I will be a priest in the church I will offer myself to be a priest within the church. And there was this joy telling people about it. So after I felt like a little baby a little boy who has just had his first PlayStation, really. A total surprise. You've come back from school, never expecting it, and you're told, look, that's yours. And I was telling everybody, yes, I believe I'm called to be a priest in the Church of England. And there was people were telling me about this gentle joy they see in me, and why they think that this is the right decision. And then, as you know, one thing led to the next, and before I knew it, I was in the discernment process, full of excitement.
Question?
Yes.
How did your wife and your children react to that, you saying that?
Right, so that was hard for them, really, but not, they weren't surprised.
No, because somebody must have been leading.
A bit like my parents as well. Of course, they never thought that I was going to be a priest at all or anything. But even when I told them, there was this but then gentle acceptance almost immediately. That,
really?
Well, if this is what God has called you to, we will support you. And that was overwhelming for me. It was really a moment where I felt like, yes, this is the right decision for me. Because it was as if God spoke to them too, in a way. Support him. Support him. And the support has been overwhelming among friends and family. And sometimes that's how you know, or that's how God's word is confirmed. Not just through you. Through you is important, but sometimes through those around you. Right. And those he will send to you in this time, so that you can hear what he wants you to hear. And that sort of helps you to ground your faith. And to have this, you talked about this bomb-proof faith. And that helps you to feel, you know what, nothing else matters. Yeah, and I'm just humbled by grace and God's mercy since, because I realized that, I haven't got the strengths myself. I haven't got the power to to keep those foundations that I've built steady and solid. I haven't got control of that.
Yeah.
I can build as much as I like, but when the wind comes and when the storms of life come,
Yeah.
you know, they could all just fall apart. And when they fall flat, what is left? And I now know what is left. And at the bottom of it all is Christ, the one who gave himself for us, the one who loves us so much so that he gave himself so that even you and I can have a share in his eternal kingdom.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Can I ask you another question?
Yes.
And it's sort of, I know a lot of people like myself that have either not had faith in the beginning or had a Christian upbringing and then completely left the path, totally left the path and then come back again. Did you ever leave the path, or did you always have faith even through those days when you were in the wilderness, if you like, when you said?
I think, first of all, I think at the beginning, like I said, I had this family faith, you know, so went to church, did all the things, said all the things, you know.
But is that a faith or is that a routine?
Well, yeah, some people might say a routine. It's something you've learned, you know, as a child, and you just go with it. Like I said, there was the moment when I met face to face with the calamities of life, and then I had to make a decision. And the decision I made was to run away from God, because I felt that God had, I've always been, you know, I've always had God on my journey. And then things came crashing, and so I felt, you know, that's it, God, see you later. And so I was in the world. And I think at that time in the world, for me, I don't think well, maybe actually I lost faith.
Yeah, I denied God at that time.
Yeah, I think I totally lost faith. I think that's what it was. I might, God was no longer central in my life. And it didn't make sense to go to church or even be around Christians, because as far as I'm concerned, there was nothing there for me. Yeah. I had to find fulfillment, happiness, joy, life somewhere else. Yeah. And so I got involved.
The reason I bring that up is I did that, and I know a lot of people that did that. And sometimes when I came back to God, I felt a little bit ashamed of doing it. Yeah. But I honestly feel that it's a natural thing. Yeah. I do. Yeah. I think it's part of the journey. Yeah. Sometimes you've got to go there before you realise what's actually right. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you that because I felt you might have been there. And you were such a glowing example to us all that I wanted other people to see that this happens.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Don't be too worried about it. That it's happened to you. You know?
What I would say is, if you're struggling with faith, that's okay. Yeah. Because in your struggling, you will find Christ. I mean, Thomas doubted. We know Thomas walked with Jesus. I mean, he saw the man do great things, but he doubted. Unless he said, I put my finger in his side, I wouldn't believe it.
In the wound.
In the wound, yes. Unless I do this, then I'm not going to believe it.
We've all had, I think the people like us that have our faith, we've all had that knowledge that God is in our lives, and it's an absolute, oh yeah, that's it. So we've all put our finger in the wound.
Absolutely, totally agree. I totally agree.
I yet to have.
Yeah,
I'm getting there.
Well, you will, and that's the other thing. My journey is totally different from your journey. It will be different from your journey. What would it be like if all Christians had this same experience of God, or their journey?
It'd be rather dull, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think so. Yeah. So I think that the fact that your journey is different from mine, there's something deeply enriching about that.
Yeah.
And so you can own your story and tell it in a way that I could never. And most oftentimes not even understand it. I mean, for example, the Apostle Paul on his way, Saul, on his way to Damascus, right, falls off his horse. He was on his way to persecute Christians, right? He falls off the horse, and the light and Jesus, the risen Christ, reveals himself to him and says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?
Yeah.
Saul had a story right there.
Yeah.
And he told that story, so much so that his writings are much more than the Gospels that we have today.
Yeah.
And this persecutor of Christians turned round to be the one who gave his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And through his writings, all of us have come to believe the Apostle Paul. What a story. That was his personal story. I might read the story and think, oh, that's a whole load of nonsense. But not for Paul.
No. Well, once for Paul. And
then once for Saul.
Once for Saul.
But not for Paul.
And then...
and so I think my journey, and like I said, there's this different parts to it. And for me, in my moment of confusion and having those couple I told you about from the mission in London come to sit by my side and say the words that I needed to hear to make a decision, for me, that was God speaking to me.
Yeah.
But you might look at it and say, well, maybe it's coincidence. You just stand up and, or maybe you were in a trance or you were dreaming or it wasn't real or something like that.
It gets to the point where there are just too many coincidences.
I think I've heard you say that before, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they all happen to be the right ones in the right time at the right place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think we should all make space for God and not feel too bad in ourselves when we lose our faith or when we struggle with our faith. I mean, St. Augustine says, and this is a popular phrase from him, he says that our hearts are restless until they find their rest in God. And so for him, in his struggles, in the search of God, his heart was restless and he did so many things, but it was in the quiet, gentle whisper that he heard those words, pick it up and read it. He picks up his Bible. He opens it. And I think it's a verse from Romans he reads. And it felt like the God that he's been searching for all these years was just made real to him in that moment.
I think that's the way that it will happen for me, is in the quiet moments. I don't think I'll have a flash of light. I mean, I'm British, for heaven's sake. I think, it doesn't really happen for us, but I think that might be the way it happens.
You never know, and there are many stories out there, but I look forward to hearing your story.
I look forward to it as well.
Yeah, so don't be weary, just keep going. Keep holding on and keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, keep passing the tests.
Absolutely. Wonderful. And this is a great forum for this conversation, isn't it? Because I think we need to talk about our faith. We need to talk about our lives. Because our lives and faith are deeply interconnected. And this is a great forum to just be and think about our life journey, the stories that we have shared here, and the life moments that we have shared with friends and family, and try to draw all of that to ask the question, where might God be in all this mess?
Yeah.
Where might he be? And I think that is the beginning of our salvation journey. That's the beginning of our redemption. When we take our eyes away from the chaos in our world and try to dig a bit deeper into our personal stories, our lives, and the lives of those around us. When we begin those conversations, there is that wonderful opportunity for God to show up.
Wonderful.
And so I thank you for inviting me and for this conversation, and may God continue to bless you and give you the strength to carry on with this.
You too, Father.
Absolutely
Thank
amazing.
you for coming as well.
Thank you. Thank you.